Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. First off, hope everybody had a great 3-day weekend. They're always the best times to just rest up, relax, kind of refresh uh, your mental state, your physical state, right? Just kind of reset everything. Mondays, I like to start preparing for the week, so it's nice to get like that extra day to kind of prep. And what's wonderful about this week, kind of similar to what we had in January after MLK Day, is that come back and it's actually a pretty busy lineup. So, um, you had just kind of jumped right into some key reports this morning with like Walmart and a few others. So it's nice, you kind of don't skip a beat, right? And then Monday's off, but you come back and things just pick up right from there. So it's really nice. What I want to talk about today is the SPY, the overall market, I guess in general, and every couple weeks I like to go over just what the spiders are doing because actually every couple of weeks it kind of gets to an interesting area. And right now we aren't quite there yet, but we're getting into that zone, right, where it's really starting to get interesting. And there's some pretty big catalysts coming up, which are probably worth putting on your radar at the moment, right? So the last time we talked about the SPY, just from like a trade point of view, was well, there's two times. So it was when we got up to the 200 day. That was most recent, right? Because the 200 day has been significant. It hasn't like been a huge area of resistance or support, but it's significant because a lot of people focus on it. Before that, what we were watching was this 260 area, if you remember, right? So we talked about 260. It's important how it was long-term support for the year, right? Let's go back. So it was longer-term support for the year. It was recent support here. We bumped back up, failed, right? It was 50% retracement from the drop, so on and so forth. So we held above it, and then we rallied, right? Air pocket here, rallied, hit the 200-day, pulled back, and then we started to tick through the 200-day last week, right? And what you can see, which is very, very, very well defined, is this, right? So we've removed all near-term resistance, moving average-wise, right? And now what do we have? We have basically open air pocket up to 280 to 281, which is very, very important. It was October pivot bounce failure, top in November, top in December. This was the G20. This was the Monday after the G20 session. So that marked like that basically was the high, and then we collapsed from there. So three separate times, October, November, December, we hit 280 to 281 on the spreaders, and three separate times we failed. So coming up into that area, we're about $1.50 to $2 away, right? So we're getting up into that range, and we basically haven't had a significant pullback, or we really haven't paused anywhere for an extended period of time, and we're coming up to a really big level. So, it's at the point where if we keep going and we don't fail, then I mean you can see that there's quite a bit of room higher. So, this is going to be an important area for bears to defend, I mean really, what you can see, pretty well defined chart, right, is that basically each time it failed, it's rolled over at least into like the mid 260s. So there could be some serious downside if we do end up failing here again. So what else, right? So that's kind of where we're at technically, but what I like to talk about from options and just from like an overall point of view is what are the catalysts, right? Like what news is coming up. And as a matter of fact, we're actually kind of entering like a pretty big area for news flow. So next week on the 27th, Powell is going to have a monetary policy speech. So I mean that's been super critical recently. I mean a lot of people are attributing a majority of this balance to the change in Fed stance. So so we're going to have Fed's Powell talk next week, right? Then on March 2nd, that's the day that the new round of China tariffs are supposed to kick in. So what's happening is that we keep getting like this, positive commentary saying, no, the China deal is going well, the China trade negotiations are going well, so on and so forth. But there hasn't actually been a significant or legitimate real announcement, right? So we've been waiting, and now the deadline is approaching pretty quickly. And you know, I'd say that people are starting to get more positive and expecting some sort of announcement. And if it doesn't come, it could be. I mean, there could be a big move either way. If it does come, right, there could be like a blow off move through it, or if it doesn't come, there could be a pretty significant pullback. But you know, whether it goes up or down, what we do know is that the deadline's looming, right? It's coming up. It's back when back at the G20, coincidentally, it was the last time there was like basically a lot of optimism around the trade deal, and that marked the top, right? And then with the deadline March 2nd approaching in about 2 weeks, give or take, right? We are almost all the way back up there. So it's funny how how these things play out. I mean, rallied into the G20, and now we're rallying into the trade deadline. So that's coming up, and that's going to be pretty significant. Also, beginning of March, the jobs report, right? And the jobs report have been a pretty busy trading sessions over the last 3 months. We've had some pretty big moves off the jobs reports. So it's not the first. So the Friday, March 1st is we're not going to get the jobs report. It's going to be Friday, March 8th. What I was looking at was, when you take all of this into consideration and the technical backdrop, right? Like you would just be expecting a pretty significant move on SPY, and this is always like what I like to go look at. So now you're looking at March 8th, right? So this is the March 8th contracts, and you can see that it's pricing in about $6, right? Which you say, okay, that's about what about two and a quarter %, give or take. But in the context of where we came, in the context of just what we've been averaging over like the last week, I mean, we've been averaging about, I believe about a 5 or 6 point move just over the last, basically like on a week to week basis. So it's really not that much, and these options are essentially 3 weeks out, right? So you have the remainder of this week, which is obviously shortened because of the holiday. You have all of next week, and then the following week. So you basically have 3 weeks, 2.5 if you want to be like if you want to say like precisely. So 2.5 weeks, pricing in 6 points. You have a critical technical level about to come in play. You have Fed's Powell statement next week, right? You have the China trade headline, the tariff deadline, right? And you have a jobs report. So you have three significant catalysts plus a significant technical level that's coming into play, and a market that's really not had a pullback in over a month, right? So it just we every once in a while. I mean, I don't like trading the spiders often. I view it more as like a hedge, right? I'm sure you've heard me talk about it. So I view it more as a hedge, but occasionally, like there's these instances where it really sets up well for a trade just on its own, right? Non-hedge wise, just as a trade outright. So I feel like we're entering that window, and what might be an even better scenario is if we kind of keep grinding, and then stall right at 280 as we head into next week, right? Maybe if this week we have less of a volatile week, like less action, right? Maybe just grind higher and start to flatline. Then what you would assume is that the options through March 8th would probably start to lose premium a little quicker, right? You get implied volatility, crunch, and also theta, right? So time value. So I just think it's you get these certain setups where it just seems that technicals, news flow, and the option pricings just aren't lining up with one another, right? I mean, there's some pretty critical news releases, headlines coming up, and then a really critical technical level. And when you take all this in consideration and look at the pricing of options, which is only like 6 points, there seems like there could be some room on those, right? So like I said, I don't trade them on their own outright very often. It's usually I usually view it more as like a hedge scenario, but this is one of those instances, kind of like back down to 260, where it seems like it could stand on its own as a trade. So I wanted to put that on your radar because it's entering my radar, and over the next week, um, if we get like a small move higher and a little bit of a contraction, maybe in like the intraday ranges, it might even be a better setup. So just keep an eye out for that. All right. Um, cool. So we still have plenty of earnings. They're not going to be as packed on a day-to-day basis, but just like the names that we'll be reporting are interesting. They're volatile. They're names that typically move. So and like with the numbers like Walmart, I mean they're market moving, and they can move like a whole group with them. So even though we're entering the tail end of earnings season, there's still plenty to look forward to, and just have to be more specific, right? And kind of take what the market's given, right? That's the way I like to basically describe it. So let me know what you guys think. I talked about the spiders, right? I try to do it every couple weeks just to give you an idea of what I'm looking at, because like we talk about in our coaching sessions, it's whether or not you trade spiders on a or Qs or Dow or IWM, whatever. Whether or not you trade on a day-to-day basis, it's important to have an opinion on the direction because it helps you formulate ideas, right? And it'll help you create biases for trades, like whether you want to be bearish, whether you want to be bullish, whether you want to be buying breakouts, whether you want to be shorting breakdowns, so on and so forth, right? So I like to talk about it every couple weeks just to get you guys on the same page as me. Um, and like I said, I'd love to hear what you think. So questions or comments, just reach out, all right? I hope you guys have a great night, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.